Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday celebration, which will be celebrated nationally beginning tomorrow. And tonight we have with us, or rather this morning we have with us, Dr. LBaldwin, Professor of Religious Studies at Vanderbilt University, and also the author of a number of books and articles dealing with Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. Baldwin, let me welcome you to the show this morning.
Thank you.
Dr. Baldwin, I think we can only say that indeed you are a scholar of Dr. Martin Luther King, that you have a number of studies. These, I think, represent two of the three studies that you have dealing with Dr. Martin Luther King. And what we'd like to do today is to talk about some of the information in these studies dealing with Dr. King, and to have you give us sort of an overview of who Dr. King was and why his celebration is important and that kind of information. But first of all, let's talk about LBaldwin. Give us sort of a biographical information about yourself.
Well, I was born in Camden, Alabama in 1949. I attended segregated schools in Alabama, graduating from Camden Academy High School in 1967. In the fall of '67, I matriculated at Talladega College in Talladega, Alabama, and I spent 4 years there, receiving in 1971 a BA degree in history. And from there, I went to Crozet Theological Seminary, the same seminary that Dr. King attended. And I was there for 4 years for the MA, Master of Arts, and MDill, Master of Divinity degrees. And from Crozet, I went to Northwestern University, where I worked on and received in 1980 the PhD in American Christianity. And from that point, of course, I began a life of teaching and scholarship. I taught at Worcester College in Ohio during the 1981-82 school term. 1982 to 1984, I was at Colgate University in New York. In the fall of '84, I came to Vanderbilt University, and I'm now in my 10th year of teaching at Vanderbilt.
And so you've been involved in quite a bit of scholarly activities, and especially dealing with Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yes, yes. I so far have written, I guess, about 20 articles on Dr. King and 3 books, 2 of which have been published already.
And so these 2 represent the 2 published works that you already have out on Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yes, yes. The first book I published in 1991 is entitled There's a Bomb in Gilead, and the subtitle is The Cultural Roots of Martin Luther King, Jr. In that particular book, I've established Dr. King's roots in the South, looking at the impact of the church, black church, the impact of the extended family network in the South, the impact of the black preaching tradition in the South, and also the impact of his experience of growing up in a segregated South. So that first book looks essentially at Dr. King as a product of black Southern culture. The second book, To Make the Wounded Whole, gets at Dr. King from a different angle. It's an attempt to understand him not simply as a Southern leader, but as a national figure and an international figure. And of course, I've also talked to a great extent about his legacy of ideals, his legacy of struggle, and what these mean for us in our continuing struggle to free the world from racism and classism and sexism and all of the other
Let's
isms.
look at, since we're talking about the celebration of the King holiday, let's look at what you might consider the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. In other words, why should we take the time to celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King? And from your perspective, having dealt with much of the scholarship and that kind of thing, why should we take that time?
Well, Dr. King unquestionably was the preeminent moral leader in this country in the 1950s and 60s. He called us back to what he called the great wells of democracy that were dug deep by the founding fathers in the formulation of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. He called us back to those principles, the principles of American participatory democracy, also the principles of Judeo-Christian heritage. And he called upon us to take seriously the command to create a communal society, a society in which all people are respected, a society in which all people participate in the political processes, a society in which all people are valued their dignity and worth are accepted. And I think this is why he was so important. And I think because of what he did in the 1950s and 60s, his ideals, his activism, we are more democratic people today. We live in a nation today where all people have the right to vote, where all people have the right to participate in the political processes, where all people can attend the schools of their choice, where all people can aspire toward whatever profession they choose. So we are a different nation. We are a more democratic nation because of what Dr. King and others did in the 1950s and 60s. This is why I think that we should celebrate his life and his legacy.
You know, Dr. Baldwin, I think that many of the people who might, young people who might watch this show probably don't understand too much about segregation and in a real sense exactly what it meant and the challenges that Dr. King and others had to deal with in trying to overcome segregation. Why don't you just sort of give us sort of an overview of what it meant to live in the United States, in the southern parts of the United States during the period of segregation and the things that Dr. King and others had to fight against?
Yes, yes. I think, as you said, it's very important because so many of our young people today, college age, high school age, have not had the kinds of experiences that I had when I was growing up in rural Camden, Alabama. I remember very vividly the humiliating white and colored signs on restroom doors, on drinking fountains, in bus terminal waiting rooms. White and colored signs were clearly there, and they stood as humiliating symbols that one encountered every day. So it had certainly a psychological impact, not only on African Americans in terms of reinforcing a kind of inferiority complex, but it also had a negative influence on white Southerners in giving them a false sense of superiority. So not only did you have the symbols of segregation, white and colored signs, but you had the almost daily verbal abuses, physical abuses of blacks in the South. So it was an ever-present system. One couldn't live 1 minute without realizing that one was black or white in that kind of hostile, tension-packed environment that I grew up in Camden, Alabama. And it was that way across the South, because as you know, the South was rigidly segregated, and the symbols were always there, be they white and colored signs, verbal abuse.